given tariffs, like you mentioned, trade wars, everything that's happening today, the leverage that the CCP has on the Western world is their dominance in rare earth. And all of those things migrate into downstream manufacturing, whether it's a washing machine, an electric vehicle, a battery, a defense system, magnet, all of that stuff ends up in high-tech goods now. They have that leverage. And so it's not just economic security, it's national security all wrapped into one.
You know, the clean energy transition depends on critical minerals most of you, even myself, can't pronounce properly. And today, the supply chain for many of them runs through China. My guest today, Mark LaVerghetta, co-founder of ReElement Technologies, is working on building domestic refining, specifically to give us capacity for rare earths and battery materials and disrupt that supply chain. Mark, great to have you.
Yeah, it's great to see you again.
I think that for most people, even the notion or idea of rare earth, like it's not something that falls into their daily lexicon. The refining of these elements is something that's completely invisible to us, even though it is such a core part of how we engage in technology. However, it seems, certainly if my YouTube is any indication, that rare earths are having a moment. What changed?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having us on today. And thanks for the support. Now, the fact that you guys are getting good clicks and on some of our content means a lot to us. But you can turn your television on, right? And see the world changes, it seems like daily. And I think one of the leverage points that, China, and you mentioned it, you has on rare earth and critical minerals is they've dominated the supply chain through the midstream. Separation, purification, refining, metallization, magnet manufacturing. I kind of put all of those in the midstream.
Right.
And there's a single point of vulnerability now in the supply chain. And while a lot of people want to focus on supply chain or the supply side of the economy, this is the perfect storm. This is equally as not as much demand driven, given growth of AI, growth of electrification, e-mobility, data center growth, cloud computing, quantum computing, everything that we are demanding from our consumer electronics, from space exploration, all of our technologies this is the perfect storm right now. And from the geopolitical sense, from our government standpoint, it's probably one of the most important topics going on today. So,
and a lot of folks, when they think about the clean energy economy or even just energy broadly, if they think about bottlenecks, they think about tariffs, supply chain risk. They focus on mining, manufacturing abroad, things like steel, et cetera. You've argued that the real bottleneck to clean energy success is refining. Help us understand why this is such a critical piece of the process and why it has become so concentrated geographically as a result.
Yeah, it's a complicated web that we navigate through here globally in the markets. The midstream is really complex. Obviously, there's a lot of vulnerabilities. It's one of the most highest important items going on today, geopolitically and through our government. But when you look at how things are refined, it's super high risk. Yeah. It's very cost intense. It's capital intense. It's energy intense. How China, and give credit where credit is due. They built a very deep and a very wide moat using conventional refining techniques and methods and technologies that make it hard to take that technology outside of it. It's just too high risk because you can argue at the end of the day that these are commodities or specialty chemicals. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we've migrated to a global economy, and end users, manufacturers, they want to go to the source, the low-cost price point, right? The low-cost provider. And that's been China for so long. But given tariffs, like you mentioned, trade wars, everything that's happening today, the leverage that the CCP has on the Western world is their dominance in rare earth. And all of those things migrate into downstream manufacturing, whether it's a washing machine, an electric vehicle, a battery, a defense system, magnet, anything that these... And all of that stuff ends up in high-tech goods now.
That's right.
So they have that leverage. And so it's not just economic security, it's national security all wrapped into one.
As you point out, refining these raw materials is extremely complex. It's been consolidated by and large in and around China. How do we disintermediate such a critical path product that our future really depends on?
My tagline that I use is, we need to solve this through innovation, not imitation. Yep. I've been using that for a couple of years now, I think. And everybody wants to focus way upstream on mining. Yeah. Okay, we're going to do a mineral deal with Ukraine, or we're going to buy Greenland. Yeah. And they have a lot of rare earths there. Well,
you find more.
You still got to refine them, yeah. right? You can dig them out of the ground as rock or mineral, but you're not putting that raw material into an iPad or an iPhone or a battery or a defense system. It has to be refined into products that the manufacturing base wants and needs and demands. And a lot of times those are ultra high pure in chemical form that flow downstream into the manufacturing base.
A great example, by the way, is right here in North Carolina, the largest reserve of ultra high pure quartz. And it all gets exported, not to Pennsylvania or California or Ukraine, but to China.
And that technology that they use is energy, chemical intense. They use chemical separation. Yeah. And everybody knows it's not the dirty secret. It's well known, but it's a dirty process. Yeah. And they don't abide by the EPA, the environmental regulations that we have here. Yep. So if you're going to produce these products, the challenge is, can you produce them at a cost point that you can be competitive in the global marketplace? Because for decades now, your end customer wants to go to the lowest price supplier. Right. That is shifting. There's some bifurcations in the market right now where, because of those vulnerabilities in supply chains, they'll pay whatever to get it. It's just, we need this product now today. Doesn't matter what we cost, because it's going to end up into an F-35 fighter jet, a multi-billion-dollar piece of equipment. Yeah. And the cost of that input is negligible. It doesn't even...
It's the similar conversation that we're having on electrons for data centers at the moment, right? So rather than imitate and try to bring all of that refining equipment stateside and set up domestic manufacturing and refining the way that we are doing now in the solar and energy and battery storage markets, how do we innovate around that supply chain?
Yeah, it was a question myself and my partners asked when we went down this rabbit hole. It was when we were being disruptive, entrepreneurial in the mining industry. We started producing our own rare earth concentrates from some of our waste streams, looking at byproduct economics and can we monetize these? And so we started looking at technology, and anything that was solvent extraction or chemical separation, which is dominated by China, we passed on because we need to innovate our way through this. That was not... Technically, it works here today. Economically, it's just we're not going to be able to produce it at a cost structure, nor is anybody going to underwrite it. Right. Raising capital to deploy that technology was
untenable.
Yeah, not going to happen. So we looked at innovative approaches on how can you do, at our foundation of what ReElement technology does is separation purification into refined products. Right. So how do you separate and purify these things innovatively? So we looked at a variety of technologies. The technology that we use is chromatography, which is a 100-year-old longstanding technology deployed in various other industries. So it was taking a new application or a novel application to a longstanding technology. And if you look back at the roots of it, I mean, back World War II, out of the Manhattan Project, chromatography was looked at the preferred way of separation and purification of rare earth elements.
Didn't know that.
And then it got put on the shelves, and then we became global economy, and we're content on exporting that part of the segment of the supply chain overseas. Well, now the paradigm has shifted materially.
Am I right that, am I remembering correctly that you found the sort of technological approach through a partnership with Purdue? Is that the university?
That's right.
And what makes it different in such a way that you're able to do what is now done in large facilities abroad in effectively a strip mall here in America?
Yeah, when you look at the deployment of that capacity, of the refining capacity and the capital that goes into it, it comes down to surface area interface with your elements that you're trying to isolate and separate and purify. If you think about it at a very high level, solvent extraction methods, chemical separation, To achieve that surface area interface, it goes through a series of equilibrium steps. For light rare earth elements, that might have to go through somewhere between 100 to 300 equilibrium phases. For heavy rare earths, that's up to about 1,000 equilibrium phases. So you're CapExing a mixer settler unit with motors to create emulsion techniques, valves, pipes, a lot of infrastructure that goes in to building these facilities. And you build them at nameplate capacity. They're not flexible for scale. It's very hard to scale them.
Oh, they're not.
If you want to add an additional production line, if your input shifts or change, you probably have to take your entire production line offline. To build additional capacity, you have to start at equilibrium phase 1 and then build out through up to 1,000. So it becomes very onerous, very high risk, very capital intense to build that infrastructure for flexibility. China made the decision that they were going to invest and do that, and they went all in on it. And they produced these things. They produced these high purity products over the past couple decades. They've built scale. We're not going to compete with their scale, and they do it at a price point that you can't deploy those methods here and try to compete on cost.
You keep dodging my question. How are you guys doing it differently here domestically?
Well, we use innovation, chromatography. We can achieve.
What does it look like? Talk about just the flexibility compared with the rigidness of the existing process.
Instead of hundreds or thousands of mixer settler units, we use a column packed with resin. In each of those columns, we can achieve up to 1,000 equilibrium phases in one column. So it comes down to your mass balance calculations on what elements, what's your feedstock, and what you're trying to isolate.
If I wanted to try and talk about it like a high school experiment with my kid, is it closer to like a liquor still or closer to like a Berkey water filter?
More like a liquor still, probably.
Okay.
So our columns are packed with resins that have either, and we have trade secrets, know-how, conversions to our resins. We've gotten good at separation and purification using this technology. But those resins will have an affinity or a lack of affinity to the elements you're trying to isolate. And so the way that you scale it, because you achieve so many of those equilibrium phases within one column, you don't have to build all of that infrastructure. And then your surface area interface is based off of cubic liter capacity of each column. So it comes down to, are you using a bigger column or a smaller column based off of what your input is? So you become very flexible. We deploy capital and capacity based off of matching supply, what feedstock we're bringing in, whether it's virgin or recycled versus demand.
And what is that feedstock typically for you at the moment, and how does that scale? Like where can you point this technology to gather more rare earths?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it kind of exemplifies of how and why we are able to achieve what we achieve here today. Over the past 3 years, we've been validating this platform to end-use customers. Taking a little bit of feedstock, producing high-purity product, and validating that through. And those are complex, challenging. We need to be congruent with our manufacturing base as well. We need to stand up a lot of manufacturing here. That's a complexity in its own right. The foundation of the technology enables us to bring in things like end-of-life magnets or an entire EV rotor or a wind turbine that has a lot of magnets on it. We ran lithium from end-of-life lithium-ion batteries for about a year. Validating that into the cathode market. And then the market quickly shifts through tariffs and trade wars, and all the focus was on rare earth elements, and we converted our production lines to all rare earth elements. So now we're seeing high demand for things that are coming out of aerospace, thermal heat coatings that are elements like yttrium, gadolinium. Germanium that goes into a lot of advanced optics, fiber optics. I think defense applications, data center, AI demand, things like that. All of those things are seeing some urgent and some near-term supply gaps. So we can get these type of inputs and help fill in some of those short-term supply gaps as we look midterm and long-term on sourcing stuff that's pulled out of the ground and broadening our capacity.
Yeah, you've been very successful recently at partnering with the government on proving out these concepts, getting grant money and partners that are helping to, ensure that we have the capacity for domestic sourcing of these materials. Could you talk a bit about some of the biggest supply chain gaps, like what you're mentioning right now? Where do those gaps show up, and how are we through the technology advancements that you're bringing to market, shortening supply times and improving national security, among other things?
The attributes of our platform enable us to be very versatile and very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
We went, like I said, we went from lithium to rare earths, which are,
we
were focusing on the traditional magnet, neodymium, praseodymium, some dysprosium, and now we're shifting to yttrium, gadolinium, germanium, gallium, things like that, so we can shift very quickly to respond to market signals. So that is a key attribute. When you talk about partnerships, whether it's commercially or through government, we've had some success in showcasing that versatility, that we can be a stopgap fix solution very quickly. And obviously, there's a lot of urgency in the market today. So we've been identified as a partner both with the defense primes, with our Department of War, other interagencies of the government, and downstream commercial, whether it's coming out of defense or tech, energy, or just industrial, partners as well, that we can provide these and help fill some of those short-term supply chain gaps, and put all the options on the table to figure out how collaboratively. And at the end of the day, we want to be a very collaborative platform. How do we work together to solve these longer term challenges that we're all facing?
So I think we all agree we want to build a more resilient, critical material supply chain, one that has more capacity for domestic response. If we get this right over the next 5 to 10 years, what industries or technologies will benefit the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing an inflection point on just general technology. Advancements of AI, I think, is a whole economy in its own. You're seeing it with data center growth, the energy requirements that are needed, the entire ecosystem there, all of our smart devices that we wear. When you look at what those end markets, what's going to be supported here, general manufacturing of goods. Do we want to re-onshore that manufacturing base, again, which goes back to not just national security, but economic security. We need to make more stuff in this country. And I think we understand that. Producing jobs, next generation jobs, tech jobs, recycling jobs, all of those things. We're at the UNC Clean Tech Summit today. So obviously there's a lot of focus on this portion of the economy. And I think the world's changed, like you said, and all of this manufacturing to bring this onshore, the inputs that go into it are becoming more complex every day.
Mark LaVerghetta, we're watching ReElement Tech and anxiously, eagerly hoping for a future where you guys help us crack the code, bring all this critical mineral back to our shores, and as you say, revitalize our domestic economy by empowering us to have more readily available access securely to the kinds of rare earths that power our present and future state. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.